The middle class is increasingly becoming an impoverished class, and the poor are increasingly being pushed into the streets, Michael Snyder reports. America's middle class is being systematically eviscerated when the Federal Reserve pumped trillions of dollars into the financial system during the pandemic. Most Americans didn't realize what that would do to them. That money certainly made the wealthy a whole lot wealthier, but it also dramatically increased the cost of living for the rest of us. So now inflation has been rising much faster than paychecks have, and the cost of living has become exceedingly oppressive. In fact, last year we witnessed the largest decline in real median household income in more than a decade. The official tally is in, and it's brutal. Americans suffered the biggest drop in household income in 2022 in a dozen years. Real median household income was $74,580 in 2022, a drop of 2.3% from the prior year, the Census Bureau said Tuesday. This is the biggest drop in household income since 2010, when household income fell 2.6%. That means it's worse than the pandemic decline of 2.2%, and it's the fourth worst year in records going back to 1985. In 2010, the U.S. economy was just coming out of the horrible recession that we had just experienced in 2008 and 2009. Those were not fun times, and the times that we are moving into will not be fun either. We're being told that high inflation is the primary reason why real median household income is falling. The declines are driven by high inflation. The measure of inflation that is used to calculate real income rose 7.8%, the worst inflation since 1981. 1981 was a long time ago, but at this time the U.S. economy quickly recovered under the leadership of President Ronald Reagan. We will not be so fortunate this time around. Our leaders flooded the system with giant mountains of money, and almost everyone cheered as they were doing it. But now we're paying the price. Recently, Gen X mom named Jessica McCabe made headlines all over the world when she posted a video on TikTok which she expressed how frustrating it is to watch her adult children deeply struggle in this economy. And she said, "I'm so tired of feeling helpless as a parent," McCabe started off the video. She acknowledged that her son was 25 and her daughter was 28 and explained, "I thought by teaching them what I learned, which is you work hard, you get a good job, you're going to get the things in life that you need, right? Worked for me, why wouldn't it work for them?" Unfortunately for all of us, the rules have changed. What worked in the 1980s and 90s simply does not work today. In her video, she acknowledged that struggle is part of life, but she also said that it's just so disheartening to see her kids get further and further down no matter how hard they try. And she said, "I see them struggling, and before my generation comes at me, yes, I understand struggling is part of life. We all struggle, but there's a difference between struggling and drowning. So we struggled, and it was tough, but now you know what? We made it. We knew there was a light at the end of the tunnel with our struggle. It seems like kids today, no matter how much they struggle, they just get further and further down," she said. And sadly, this is the reality of life for most Americans today. More than 60% of the nation is currently living paycheck to paycheck, and former Ford CEO Mark Fields just admitted to CNBC that someone needs to make more than $100,000 a year just to be able to afford a new vehicle these days. A former Ford CEO said that a consumer has to make more than $100,000 to afford a new car. As a result, the price of vehicles is starting to come down, which is leading to an inventory correction. Vehicles are getting older and they need to be replaced, he said. Americans are keeping their vehicles longer than ever, and that's because most of us simply can't afford to replace them. As I've discussed previously, Americans are increasingly turning to debt to help make ends meet from month to month. Credit card debt surged dramatically during the second quarter, and this is starting to become an enormous problem. American households now have an average of $10,170 credit card debt, as record numbers say they're worried about being cut off from access to loans. Data from the New York Fed Reserve shows nationwide credit card debt swelled by $43 billion in the second quarter of the year, the second largest increase on record. Of course, there is a limit to how much debt that U.S. consumers can take on, and financial institutions are starting to say no to a lot more often. Meanwhile, a separate survey by the Fed revealed 60% of respondents found it more difficult to access credit, the highest level since the data series began in June 2013. I warned my readers that the flow of credit would start to get tighter and tighter, and now it's happening. Right now, so many formerly middle-class Americans have been pushed into what I call the impoverished class, quote unquote, and many that were formerly poor now find themselves pushed onto the streets. In fact, according to the Wall Street Journal, we've witnessed the largest increase in homelessness ever recorded this year. The United States has seen the biggest ever spike in homeless people living on the streets, as preliminary figures showed a record 11% increase in 1 year. There are nearly 600,000 rough sleepers across cities and towns in America, and the jump from 2023 to 2022 to 2023 so far is the highest since the government started tracking the data in 2007, according to the Wall Street Journal. Places like Oakland and San Francisco in California have become hotbeds for homelessness, as people living on the streets are like drug tourists who arrive to have easy access to narcotics. So please don't believe anyone that tries to convince you that the economy is doing just fine. It most certainly is not. Homeless encampments are popping up like mushrooms all over the nation, and many communities are not pleased about all this. For example, just check out what has been happening in Austin, Texas. Shocking footage has exposed a scene in Austin Park filled with Narcan and junk, as far as the eye can see, as homeless encampment continues to grow. The videos were of the West Bolden Creek Greenbelt and were posted on Monday by activist Jamie Hammonds, who reports from the Texas Capitol on the X page. And another greenbelt destroyed here in Austin, he says, nothing but trash and junk as far as you can see. This is absolutely horrible. Hammond says, adding that the encampment was at least the size of a football field, and you can smell it even before you enter the greenbelt, he says. As the economy continues to crumble, things are going to get even worse. And as things get worse, the middle class will continue to shrink. It's almost as if we're playing a really bizarre game of musical chairs. With each passing day, even more spots in the middle class are being removed from the game, and the ranks of the impoverished class continue to grow larger and larger. This is by Michael Snyder. He says, my name is Michael, and my brand new book entitled End Times is now available on Amazon. In addition to my new book, I've written 6 other books that are available on Amazon, including 7-Year Apocalypse, Lost Prophecies of the Future America, The Beginning of the End, and Living a Life That Really Matters, Commissions Earned. When you purchase any of these books, you help to support the work that I'm doing. And one way that you can really help is by sending copies as gifts to family and friends. Time is short, and I need help getting these warnings into the hands of as many people as possible. I've also started a brand new Substack newsletter, and I encourage you to subscribe so you won't miss any of my articles. I've published thousands of articles on the Economic Collapse blog, End of the American Dream, and the most important news. And the articles that I publish on those sites are republished by dozens of other prominent websites all over the world. I always freely and happily allow others to republish my articles on their own websites, but I also ask that they include this about the author section with each article. The material contained in this article is for general information purposes only, and readers should consult licensed professionals before they make any legal, business, financial, or health decisions. I encourage you to follow me on social media, Facebook and Twitter, and any way that you can share these articles with others is definitely a great help. These are such troubled times and people need hope. John 3:16 tells us about the hope that God has given us through Jesus Christ. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. If you have not already done so, I strongly urge you to invite Jesus Christ to be your Lord and Savior today. This is by Michael Snyder on the Economic Collapse blog. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Finally, support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.